Welcome, everyone, to a very special edition of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Diener. I am Cody Diener, and I am a professional wrestler. I'm a professional wrestling producer with TNA Wrestling. I'm a professional speaker traveling all across North America, sharing my story and the lessons I've learned along the way to youth across the nation. I am a father to 4 beautiful children and a husband to 1 beautiful wife. And I am the people's choice. And this is the people's choice. This very special edition of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling is in your hands. The control is all in your hands. Any question that you have, I'm going to answer it today on the show right now. So, before I jump into the questions and the priority that I'm going to be giving to these questions, because I have a bunch of questions that have been asked by you, the fans, which I appreciate. I'll just quickly say hello to those that are live with us right now over on YouTube at Cody Diener Podcast. Is Go Figure saying, look at this legend. Hey, Go Figure. Thank you for the comment. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. If you got a question as I jump in here, feel free to ask. I'm having some coffee right now in my very special mug because I just got back last night at like 3 a.m. from a very top secret, which is not going to be so top secret anymore after I say what I'm about to say. I got together with the skeleton crew at Rest When Dead. If you are familiar with my show, you know that Rest When Dead clothing is an OG sponsor. You can go check out all their merch at restwhendead.ca and on Instagram at rest. Entire skeleton crew. So Aaron York, the president of not just Rest When Dead, but the president of CEO Fit, which is supplements available at ceofit.ca, and Hustle Culture Fitness Gym in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. He brought myself, Crazy Steve, Jody Threat, Jake Something, all together for the last couple days in Moose Jaw to celebrate being a really awesome crew, but to film some stuff, to film some content, to take some photos, to build this team that we've built into an even stronger team. And we created some pretty cool stuff that you are all going to be seeing in over the next couple of weeks, including something that will be showing up on this podcast next week on the show. So stay tuned for that. If you aren't familiar with Rest When Dead, and you're watching this live, check out the swag behind me. We got some t-shirts. We got this really cool stringer tee by Rest When Dead. Very popular design. I got my Rest When Dead hat. I'm wearing my Rest When Dead Father Time t-shirt. Another very popular item over at restwhendead.ca. Go Figure saying in the chat, Moose Jaw is the most Canadian sounding place ever. Yeah, you're right. It is. And it is one of the most Canadian places ever in the sense that everyone in Moose Jaw is like super chill, super kind. And yeah, it's just flat prairie farmland as far as the eyes can see. I've been to Saskatchewan many times, mainly for speaking. I do a lot of speaking out in Saskatchewan, and I love it out there. The people are just so awesome. And yes, Go Figure, they are very Canadian, meaning they're very kind and just wonderful folks. So one way you can support me is by supporting Rest When Dead, restwhendead.ca. Also, if you're looking for some supplements, head on over to ceofit.ca and get all your supplementary needs. They do free shipping over $120 orders, and then very, very cheap, reasonable shipping, like $6 American or $7 Canadian on any amount that you purchase. So it's like the cheapest shipping prices. They got only the highest quality products. That's over at ceofit.ca. So go check them out. So that's one way you can support me. Another way you can support me is by going to my Pro Wrestling Tees store, prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Diener. You can also get a cameo from me, cameo.com/Cody Diener. And you can also go to Patreon, patreon.com/Cody Diener, and be a patron. You can get every single episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling early and ad-free, as well as bonus stories from all of my guests. Those are all up right now. Bonus stories. Go check out the bonus stories. They are pretty wicked awesome. And every single guest that I have had has given me a bonus story, whether that's, former TNA world champion Josh Alexander, or my buddy Rest When Dead athlete Crazy Steve, or Rosemary, Jessica Havoc from Decay, like a whole plethora. Joe Henry, I got bonus stories from everybody. David Sahadi, legendary producer with TNA. All these people have given me bonus stories, bonus content. It's all up right now over at patreon.com/Cody Diener. And because my patrons who've been supporting me with this show since the beginning, which is like almost a year. We're getting closer and closer to that episode 52 mark, that 1 year anniversary of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. We're getting so close, which is very surprising to me. We are creeping up on that. Since the beginning, these patrons of mine have been supporting me to help me bring this show to you free each and every week, whether it's here on YouTube or on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. It goes up there each and every week. And it's to be honest with you, it's been very difficult because I'm a one-man band. I do everything myself. I produce the show, I edit the show, I record the show, I line up the guests, I created the theme song to the show. It's like everything. It's just me, and I'm doing all the graphics. I'm doing everything, and it's it's been hard, and it's been a lot of work because uh as I said at the top of the show, I'm a professional wrestler traveling all around the world wrestling. I'm a professional speaker during the week, going around to schools, doing presentations. It's very, very busy. The month of May has been a very busy month. And then I got to make sure that I'm putting out this content that I've promised to be putting out. So it's it's been a lot, but I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the process. So, like I said, I'm having this coffee right here because I'm tired. I've been on the road, and I want to make sure that I get this content out to you guys. And I've been promising I was going to do another Ask Cody Anything episode for a long time, and I wanted to make sure that I did it for you guys. So I see some more people showing up here in the chat. New Scott, what's up, Diener? Hey, buddy. It's good to see you. I've known New Scott for many years. If you're in the Facebook on watching this on Facebook, go check out New Scott and all of his content. He's got some sweet stuff. Also, Chris Maloney over on YouTube says, "What's your favorite coffee?" Chris Maloney, thank you. And I'm actually gonna address your question here, probably right off the hop here really soon. But speaking of coffee, that's your question. And the coffee that I'm drinking, this is all just coming together so nicely with this question, Chris, because I wanted to talk about something that I have in this coffee. It's a product that I got. It's protein. I got a protein scoop that's made for coffee, caramel flavor, that I picked up over at ceofit.ca. It's protein coffee. It's 10 grams of high quality protein right in your coffee. This tastes like a caramel cappuccino, but it's not too strong. It's just the right amount. It's not too sweet. There's 0 grams of sugar in this, by the way. And I'm usually just a black coffee guy. I don't put any sweetener. I don't put any sugar. I don't put any cream. It's just black. And I just put a scoop of this protein in it now that I got over at ceofit.ca. And man, that's my answer to your question, Chris Maloney, is what's my favorite coffee? It's my coffee with the protein powder that I got from ceofit.ca. Go check that out right now. So that's supporting my sponsors. You guys are supporting me by showing up here on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. And I want to make sure that I get to all my questions. So I was in the middle of talking about my patrons from patreon.com/Cody Diener, who have all this um support that they've been giving me for since day one. And I put out to my patrons, hey, um ask me a question. I got this upcoming episode. I'm going to answer the questions live. So I'll be answering live in the chat. I see people here. And if I'm stumbling over my words, it's because I'm not used to this live stuff. I have like mild ADHD and OCD, and I want to make sure that I get everything done, and I want to get everything done correct. So like I'm seeing everything coming up in the comments and in the chats, but then I also want to get to these questions from my patrons, and I'm also seeing how many people in the chat, and I want to like plug my sponsors properly. So man, I needed this coffee because it's a whirlwind of insanity right now. Doing these things, I'm not used to it. That's one reason I got to do more of these, because I enjoy it, but it's like a whirlwind of sensory overload for me. Again, I'm a one-man band. I don't have a producer in the back end doing this and fielding questions for me. Like I'm doing it all live right now, all by myself. So anyways, back on track. My patrons, that's what I'm doing. I'm putting over my patrons from patreon.com/Cody right now. And I've got a list. Let me see. What do I got? I've got 1, 2, about four questions from my patrons that I want to get to first. Because I said my patrons, I was going to get to their questions first on the show. And that's what I want to do right now. So the first one that came in was from CWN over on my Patreon. And I'm pretty sure that was you, Chris Maloney. Chris Maloney is watching this live on YouTube right now, but he's also supported me over on my Patreon. And there's free trials, by the way. So you can just go over to patreon.com/Cody and get yourself a free trial. And next time I do one of these, I'll make sure that I get to your question very first. So the first question that came in was very timely. Those of you that are Ontario independent wrestling fans are probably familiar and heard the news that Jesse Scott, also known as JT Player, also known as Tiberius King, recently passed away. He passed away on May 7th. And he was a very, very close friend of mine. He was there my very first day of wrestling school. He started the wrestling school that I joined 25 years ago. He started the wrestling company that I first wrestled for 25 years ago. And he's been with me every single step of the way in my career as a support system for me. But then even on top of that, over the last number of years, became a support system for me as a dad. He's was a father of 3 awesome kids. I'm a father of 4. So we would share not just wrestling stories with one another, but we would share dad stories together. One of his kids would do something funny, and he'd send me a video or send me a pic, and then I'd send him some stories back of what I was doing with my kids. And man, the memories that I have with Jesse Scott, Tiberius King, JT Player are just, there's a whirlwind of them. So this question came in from CWN on Patreon saying, can you share a wrestling story or two about Jesse Scott? And then the hashtag thoughts, prayers, and strength. I just want you guys to know that anyone who's been sending their love and prayers and positive vibes to the Scott family, thank you. They very much appreciate it. And I'm actually going to start but answering this question simply by saying I'm not going to answer it right now. And hopefully that doesn't offend you or upset you that I'm not going to answer your question, but there's a reason for that. I guess I'm saying this live right now because it's going to force me to do it. But I want to have a very special episode that's completely just dedicated to the memory of Jesse Scott, our buddy JT Playa, where I talk to my friends, his friends, and they all share their favorite memories of Jesse Scott. So that's going to be coming up in the coming weeks. I think probably once I feel more up to it and more able to really answer the question that you've asked, which I very much appreciate, by the way, CWN, that you've asked that. But it's still really new and it's still really fresh, both for me and my friends. And it's it's one that I want to make sure that I give the proper thoughtful answer to, and I'm not able to do that right now. So I want to do that along with my friends and with my family and the people that all love Jesse. We're going to do that together. We're going to answer that question together is what we're going to do, Chris. We're going to answer that question of some memories of our buddy Jesse Scott. We're going to do that together. So in the coming weeks, as I start to put that together, I will be releasing a very special edition of this show that will be completely dedicated to the memory of Jesse, where we will share a plethora of stories, and there'll be a lot of smiles in that episode, I'll tell you, because Jesse Scott, for anyone that knew him, he was one of those guys that was very much like, I would use this analogy a lot with people that never met him. I'd say he's basically, if like Chris Farley or a Will Ferrell. For me, whenever I watch Chris Farley or Will Ferrell on a movie or TV, I would just start to smile. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to tell a joke. They didn't have to, literally, they walked onto the screen, and then I would be smiling, waiting for something for them, what they were going to say or what they were going to do. Jesse was like that. He had that characteristic of him that as soon as he walked into the room, you just had a smile on your face, and you were just waiting for him to open his mouth, say something, do something. He didn't even have to. There'd be so many times when I would just be hanging out with him where I was just smiling. And anytime I hung out with Jesse, I would leave, my face would hurt, my stomach would hurt, because I would spend the majority of the time laughing and sharing stories. So I'm going to do that same thing with Jesse's family and friends on a future show, where we will smile, we will laugh, and we will share stories about our fallen friend Jesse Scott, who passed away on May 7th. And I'll do that when myself and his friends and family are feeling more capable of doing that in a positive, meaningful way, which will be coming up soon. So I appreciate that question. And I also appreciate all the positive vibes I've been getting from fans who have reached out to me publicly and privately, knowing about the passing of my friend Jesse Scott. So thank you for that, and thank you for all the support. Gilmy Talks was the next question that came in over on patreon.com/Cody Diener. Gilmy Talks, a patron of mine, said, I would like to hear why you work with charities so much. What a good question. Why do you work with charities so much? Well, like a lot of things that have happened in my wrestling career, they did not happen with necessary a lot of planning or a lot of forethought. They just happened. And this thing that started to happen kind of organically, I just ran with it to see where it would go. And a lot of those times, those things in my career that had just happened and I ran with it grew into something really cool. Whether that was a gimmick that I was doing on TV or at shows, which I'm going to be talking about because I got a lot of questions about that here, or even my speaking career kind of fell on my lap, and I had my first speech and then I had my second. And I literally made a career out of this thing that kind of just happened organically that I wasn't planning on. The same thing happened with the charity work that I did. And I started to do, for those of you that aren't familiar, I have something called Giver for Charity. And together with young wrestling fans all across Canada, I've done multiple fundraisers with a bunch of different organizations and been able to raise over $20,000 for different children's charities all across the country of Canada. All of those fundraisers that I've partnered with young wrestling fans that I've met at shows. So that's one part of the answer is why do I work with charity so much? Well, it's because there's a heartfelt connection to each charity that I work with, because it's connected to a fan that I've met in my journey. So, but it started with this idea started when I had a artist make me this painting of myself. I did a charity event for the Special Olympics. I was there, and this artist made me this painting, and he gave me 5 copies of this amazing painting that he made. And I felt really honored by this painting because there were some other distinguished guests at this banquet that I went to, and one of those guests was Roberto Alomar from the Toronto Blue Jays. Another guest was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, one of my childhood heroes. And they had paintings of themselves that this artist made for this gala. I'm like, this is cool. And then right beside them was a picture of me. And I'm like, one of these things is not like the other. I'm like, Roberto Alomar, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Cody Diener. It was just like, okay, wait a minute. It was kind of a surreal. And then he gave me these copies of this painting, and he gave me 5 copies and said, "Hey, why don't you hand out these 5 copies of these painting and do it at your wrestling show. Find 5 kids, 5 lucky fans, and just give them this as a present." And this idea immediately popped into my brain where I said, "Can I do one better? Can I print out hundreds of the copies of this?" Because I'm already at my merchandise table at every show. That's the thing about indie wrestling. One of the other things that I love is I'm working the merch table. A lot of those people that know me, they've come to an independent wrestling show. They know I spend a lot of time at the merch table, and I got a big table. I got a lot of stuff. So I'm at my merch table. I'm hawking my merch already. So I said, "Can I sell these at my merchandise table? But I'm not going to keep any of the money. I will donate all the money to charity." And I had this idea because I was at this gala for the Special Olympics, and I knew that at that moment the powerlifting team in St. Thomas, Ontario, Canada, that was a Special Olympics powerlifting team. They were trying to raise some funds for some new equipment for their team. So I'm like, why don't I start there? I'll do a fundraiser for the Special Olympics team, and I'll sell these copies of this painting that you made. And the artist was like, "That sounds like a really good idea. Why don't you do that?" And the artist is Ricker Art, by the way. It's Rikar, Ricker Art. He's a local artist from St. Thomas, Ontario. Um, grew up, I grew up about 45 minutes from this town in my little small town of Port Bruce, Ontario, population less than 200 people. So like it's a very tight knit community. So I wanted to support a local artist and he was supporting me. So, and Chris Maloney in the chat right now says, "Was that the Redneck Renegade portrait?" Yes, it was the Redneck Renegade portrait he made me. It was my very first art piece that I used, and I printed those off. I started selling them, and in the first month of selling these copies of this painting, I was able to make $300 for the Special Olympics powerlifting team. And because it was so close to home, and I had all this money from my merch table, I literally took the $300 cash that I made selling these portraits and hand delivered it to the Special Olympics team. I went to one of their workout sessions. So I did some bench press and some shoulder press and some bicep curls with the St. Thomas Special Olympics powerlifting team. I hand delivered them the cash that I made from the first fundraiser that I did, and just had a blast with this powerlifting team. Oh man, the cast and characters of this could have been a movie. I should have filmed it. I have like a couple videos and a couple pictures of that. And this is back in like 2018 that I did this. And oh man, there could have been a miniature movie or documentary just about this team. They were so awesome, so kind, so welcoming. And oh man, I love just hanging out with that powerlifting team that day, and the smiles that were on their faces, how appreciative they were of this fundraiser that I did. I mean, I was hoping to give them more money, but it was all grassroots. It was just me selling some 8x10s at a wrestling shows, right? So I give them the $300. They were so appreciative of it. And to answer your question, Gilmy Talks over on Patreon, the question being, why do you work with charity so much? Well, that day I got addicted to it, because I got addicted to this positive feeling that I felt from these people, the appreciation, the love that I felt from those people for helping them. Like I got addicted to it. And I decided, well, I got to do this again. And I also, because of that experience, I wanted to make sure that any fundraiser that I did was going to be connected to something that I cared about. It was going to be something personal. It wasn't just going to be like, oh, here's a company in need, or here's a charity that's in need. Oh, and they're local, so that's good. Let's do something with them. I mean, that's good. That's positive. That's great. If that's what you want to do, and you know that there's something that's in need in your community, support it. That's wonderful. But for me, I wanted to have a connection to the charity that I was working with. So then I started to meet some other wrestling fans, and I've done some things with the Rumball Camp for the Deaf, that all fundraisers I've done with my buddy Christopher, who gave me my sign name, which became my logo for Giver for Charity. This is my sign name. This is Cody Diener in sign language. So anyone that's been to my website or has seen me speak, you can go to chrisgrayspeaks.com right now. Go to chrisgrayspeaks.com. Actually, I'm going to put that in the comments here for anybody that's interested. So you can just click on that and head on over there. And when you head on over there, you'll see that this logo is up on. Oh, I didn't put in the right thing in the chat there. Let me redo that. This is a fail right now. Me trying to put this in there properly for everybody to go check it out. And if you go to chrisgrayspeaks.com, and you'll see this logo, because every single speech that I do, I talk about how I got this logo, how I got this sign name, and it became my logo as well for Giver for Charity, where I started to sell t-shirts. So instead of just selling these portraits, I sell these t-shirts, and it's because this is the sign name that I was given from my buddy Christopher, a young wrestling fan. He gave me my sign name. So that's the story behind this logo that you see on that website. And my Giver for Charity logo, it's because it was a present from a young wrestling fan. He gave that to me, and I felt so honored. I made it my logo. I started selling t-shirts. We've done multiple fundraisers for the Rumball Camp for the Deaf. I've also partnered with another young wrestling fan friend of mine, Reagan, in Brantford, Ontario. We've done fundraisers for the Lansdowne Children's Center. They work with autistic children to help get them involved in different sports and community events and just community outreach. Anything that they want to get involved in the community, they have somebody that can help them, come alongside them, get involved with them, so that they feel more comfortable, whether it's playing baseball or getting involved in an art school or whatever it may be that the child is interested in. They have somebody from the Lansdowne Children's Center kind of help them come out of their shell, communicate more. And my buddy Reagan went there, and it really, really helped her. So we've done multiple fundraisers for them. So this is a very long answer to your question, but as you can probably tell, Gilmy Talks, I am super passionate about all the work that I do for charities. So why I do it and why I continue to do it and why I will continue to do it is not just because there's people in need, which there's a lot of folks out there, but there's people that I have met in my journey in this life as a professional wrestler, that I've seen the need firsthand. And then there's a connection with these people that I've met, and I've gotten addicted to helping people, and it feels really good. So if you see somebody in need, consider helping them. And I just challenge you, when you do, see how you feel after you help that person, or that community group or that charity or whatever it may be. See how you feel, and I bet you're going to like how you feel, and you're gonna like it. I see Samantha Harvey over on Facebook just said into the chat, and said that my brother's a fan, who was also one of the Give for Charity. Samantha, I'm pretty sure, are you talking about Connor? I'm pretty sure that's who you're talking about, Samantha. If I'm correct, you're talking about your brother Connor Gunkel. We did a recent campaign for a wrestling fan who's I've known for Man, I think 20 years. Yes, there it is. Samantha, I was right. So that was my buddy, my buddy Connor. We did a giver for Connor recently. So anybody that might be in the chat right now or is listening to this or watching this that gave to that, thank you very much. It was very much appreciated. Connor is going through a plethora of health issues that aren't covered through health insurance. So we did a fundraiser for the family, and I was able to give all that money to Connor and his family so that he could during the Christmas season to help ease some of the stress that the family was feeling from their financial bills. So yes, it's sometimes the fundraiser is directly connected not just to a need from a wrestling fan friend that I've made, but gone directly to a wrestling fan. In this case, it was Connor. So thank you for showing up here on the show today, Samantha, and reminding me of Connor. Hopefully Connor's doing well. I'm in touch with the family kind of sporadically and hearing updates on how he's doing. So my thoughts, my prayers, positive vibes are going out to Connor and all the things that he's dealing with health wise. We're thinking of you, Connor. And thanks for the comment there, Samantha. Back to my patrons. The next question from one of the patrons was, let's get into some wrestling stuff here. That's why a lot of you guys are here. And we got MGB Graham over on patreon.com/Cody Diener said, for you, what has been the most noticeable change since Impact became TNA again? MGB Graham. Well, that's a hard question, actually. The most noticeable change since Impact became TNA again, because the team, the people, the wrestlers, still have the same passion that we had when it was called Impact Wrestling, and we changed the letters back to TNA. I think one of the immediate answer to that really stands out to me is related to something that Gail Kim said on this show just this past week. So if you haven't listened to that episode with Gail Kim, TNA Hall of Famer, one of the best female professional wrestlers of all time, she was a recent guest on the show. And go back in the archives and listen to that. It was just last week as well as the week prior, 2 parts with Gail Kim. And she said when Impact announced that it was becoming TNA Wrestling, she was in the back and she was standing beside some knockouts who had this visceral, emotional reaction to the announcement that it was becoming TNA. There was an awesome package that was made, by the way. So if you haven't seen that, when that was announced, the production team headed up for that one by Eric Tompkins. I got to give my love to Eric Tompkins, who's just one of the amazing guys that's on the team with TNA Wrestling, had this idea for this concept and he made it happen, made it reality. And not everybody knew about it. I didn't know about it. You know, only the people that were involved in that announcement and of making of that video, there was kind of a small group of people that knew about it. I wasn't one of those people. So they make the announcement. Gail Kim's in the back. Everybody's kind of watching on the monitor, and there was like this huge response from the locker room because we were all finding this out in real time, just like the fans, that we were becoming TNA again. And like people are standing up on their chairs, screaming, like going crazy. The pop in the locker room was almost as big as the pop out in the audience, but maybe probably not quite as much because the audience was freaking going nuts for it. And Gail Kim said that the knockouts that she was standing beside kind of turned to her and turned to each other and like all said, "Oh my God, I'm going to be a TNA knockout." And Gail said she got really emotional when she heard them say that because Gail was a part of a group of women that were the women's revolution really before the WWE ever had one. And that's the legacy that Gail and others from that generation have passed on, this legacy of this amazing division. And other wrestlers have built this legacy of TNA that they were proud of. and Gail was proud to be a TNA knockout. And then that legacy got passed on to this next generation of young women who are proud, so proud that they're getting emotional saying, "Oh my God, I'm going to be a TNA knockout." And that feeling is really, I think, the biggest difference between the change from Impact Wrestling to becoming TNA is this like pride that's associated with those 3 letters because there's so much history in TNA. And to me, because I've been around so long, it feels like it was just yesterday when TNA started, but they started right when I started wrestling, in the early 2000s. It became a viable option rather than going to the WWE. The second company was kind of was being created and giving this other brand, I guess, to the wrestling world that was different then. It was unique, it was different, it was awesome, and wrestling fans fell in love with it. So a lot of people have these memories of it. So just those 3 letters alone, there's an emotional connection to it that it's kinda hard to describe other than to say that it's meaningful. So it was very meaningful to the wrestlers in the locker room, and then it became apparent and is still apparent to this day that when I come into an arena and I come down to the ring, and I just recently had a match that I loved. I love. Go back and watch it. You go to the TNA Plus app. It's TNAWrestling.com. Get the TNA Plus app. I just had a really super wicked awesome fun match with Jake something against the Rascals, Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel, and in the middle of the match, because the match was so wicked awesome, one of my favorite matches I've had in a while with TNA wrestling. And in the middle of the match, the crowd is chanting TNA, TNA, TNA. And the pride that was in me that I'm in the middle of this match, this crowd is acknowledging the hard work, because that's the cool thing about that chant is the meaning behind that chant is, hey, we see what you're doing. You're in the ring. You're kicking ass. You're giving us something that we can't see anywhere else. This is exclusive to the product of TNA, this badass wrestling, this cool, different than wrestling. We appreciate it. We respect it. We love what we're watching. We love this product. We love this show. We love the people that are in the ring. TNA, TNA. And being part of that, man, it feels good. So that's the noticeable change. I think it's like an emotion. There's an emotional attachment to those 3 letters. I feel it. I'm feeling it right now, even saying this out loud. Those people in the chat that are talking about how awesome this is and what's going on, they feel it. Wrestling fans feel it. The audience live on every show feels it. Man, there's just an emotional connection to those 3 letters. So to me, that's the most noticeable change is the emotion from the fans, and it's only going to be continue to move onward and upward. I'm super stoked about every single television taping or pay-per-view that we're doing. I'm just excited to show up and be like, oh man, how hot's the crowd going to be tonight? And there's always different. There's always like a different passion that's brought forth from the audience. But man, I love it each and every time. And I love the TNA fans. I love those 3 letters, and I'm proud to be a TNA wrestler. Next question from Patreon is John Kasperzik. I think I'm saying that right. John Kasperzik. He actually asked two questions, and I'm gonna do the second one first because it was also another question by somebody else. I get asked this question all the time, and I'm gonna give you a cop out answer. I'm not even gonna be able to answer this question because there's just too much. There's too much to this. So the question is, what has been your favorite gimmick? Oh, no, sorry, that's my first question. I'm doing the second one. The second question is, I'm gonna get to that one. My favorite gimmick is coming up because it's connected to another TNA superstar actually that asked a question that I'm gonna get to. Um, what has been your favorite or one of your favorite matches that you've had over the last 20 plus years of wrestling and being in the wrestling business? Oh man, what has been um my favorite? Um, it's tough. Also, I'm just noticing right now, I'm going into my Instagram, and I'm noticing that all the questions that have come in over on Instagram aren't coming in on the software that I'm using. Um, so those of you that are over on Instagram and are saying all these nice, really kind things, thank you. And it's awesome that you are in the chat and you're saying stuff. I appreciate you. It's not showing up on my software. So now I'm saying, seeing all these comments over on the Instagram, I might have to hop on over there separately after, because I'm not seeing it pop up on my software. So everyone that's over on Instagram, thank you. I'm seeing the comments now and I appreciate you being here. But my favorite match, it's impossible to answer that. It's impossible. I can't answer that. I don't know. I've had so many, and even if I'm asked who my favorite opponent is, I I can't answer because there's so many of them. I'm gonna give you a just a general put over right now of a particular area because all of my favorite opponents come from the same area, which is right here in Ontario, Canada. Ontario, the province of Ontario in the country of Canada has been, since the beginning of my career and before that, a hotbed for independent wrestling and creating some of the best professional wrestlers in the last number of decades have all come out of Ontario, Canada. And I didn't realize when I started wrestling how spoiled I was to grow up and start my career in this territory. I didn't realize that until I left the territory. And I started to wrestle in some other territories um, outside of Canada. Ryan Harvey over on YouTube just said Canada has the best indie wrestlers. You're right, Ryan. 100%. And I'll take it a step further and say Ontario specifically, because it's where I spent the most time in my career. And once I started to leave the territory and do work in other territories and other areas of North America, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like on a show that I'm doing in some other territory, I don't want to bury any other territory. So I'll just say, like, if there's 10 wrestlers on the show, you know, two of them are good. And like, oh, these guys got potential. These two, they could make it. Of these 10 guys, a couple of these guys maybe have a chance of making it. In Ontario, it's you go to a show and of the 10 guys, you're like, "Oh my god, like 8 of these guys could make it." It's the talent in Ontario, and this is still to this day, you do these shows and it's like, "Oh my god, the how spoiled the fans are," and go figure saying this over on YouTube. "We're spoiled to be indie fans here in Ontario." Hell yeah, you are. Um the talent that is in Ontario, the serious talent that is there is second to none. And if you're an Ontario indie wrestling fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about right now. I'm preaching to the choir. So the answer is, like, my favorite matches, most of them have happened right here on an independent wrestling show in Ontario that was never filmed. Because that's the thing too. A lot of matches when I started, they weren't filmed. There's matches I've had, a lot of my favorite matches will never see the light of day. Nobody other than the 400 or 500 people that were there in the arena that night uh, are going to remember, or not that they're going to remember, are going to know what happened, because it's just those people that have that memory. I have that memory of that match, and I've had such kick-ass matches with guys like Sean Spears, with Eric Young, and last number of years. My favorite opponent by far is Tyler Turva, who I also had on the show. He's my road wife. So go check out Tyler Turva and go check out the episodes that I had with him a few weeks ago. He's got some really cool. He's got a bonus story, by the way, talking of Ontario indie wrestling. There's a bonus story over on patreon.com right now with me and Tyler Turva talking about a very typical Ontario indie wrestling weekend, which is insane. Not to us, because it's every weekend for us, but to the average person, you hear about the story about our weekend, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's crazy. So there's a lot of talent, a lot of just really good people in Ontario indie wrestling, and which leads to a comment that just got put in YouTube as well as the next question. So this was coming together very, very nicely because Jamie Weisner over on YouTube asked, "What is Josh Alexander like backstage?" Speaking of Ontario indie talent, probably the top Ontario independent talent to come out of the province of Ontario in the last decade is Josh Alexander, former TNA heavyweight champion, future Hall of Famer. Um, match of the Every match that he has, immediately becomes a match of the year candidate because he just leaves it all in the ring every single time. So the question is kind of what kind of person is Josh Alexander? What's he like backstage? Well, he's like every typical Canadian wrestler. He's very polite, respectful, and positive and awesome. So he's no different in that way. But Josh is really, really cool guy, which leads to a question that came in for this episode, which, oh my gosh, lo and behold, who did this question come from? It came from Josh Alexander. So I put this out to the fans. I'm gonna actually get type it into the comments here so that you guys can see it. And this is from Josh Alexander. I'll kind of make this a shorter version because he asked this question. I'll read it first. It says, "Have you found it intimidating to change your look and character at different points throughout your career, from Cody Steele to Cody Diener, the original Diener to the everyman, and so on?" The question, have you found it intimidating changing your character over the years? What a good question. That comes from Josh Alexander. So that right there, the fact that Josh asked me a question for this show, that's one, shows you the type of person that Josh is. Knew that I needed some questions, wanted the show to be good, wants the show to be good for the fans. So asked a really good question that I'm going to answer right now, which I think is a really, really good one. Have you found it intimidating changing your character over the years? So for those that have followed me for the last 25 years know that there's a lot of different reincarnations or different versions of me and of my character. So I started wrestling as Cody Steele. I was a small, skinny little kid from a small town in the middle of nowhere. I started wrestling when I was like 140 pounds, soaking with a brick in my pocket. I had shiny red PVC pants and wore a t-shirt because I was so skinny and jumped in the ring and started wrestling. I had no business being in a ring, but I mean, we all start somewhere, right? And I finally got in shape so much enough that I was asked to do some matches for the WWE. I got a tryout match. I wrestled Kurt Angle in the Kurt Angle Invitational on WWE SmackDown about 4 years into my career. That didn't work out in terms of getting a contract. So I asked Arn Anderson why I wasn't getting a job, and he said, "You got to be different." So then I created this Cody Diener character that became the Cody Diener that a lot of people remember from my first run in TNA. I had a handlebar mustache and a mullet. I wore Daisy Duke shorts. I just made myself completely different from what I was before and completely different than anything that was on television wrestling at the time. And I was able to get a contract with TNA because of that character. I ended up losing my job with TNA wrestling, and then I altered that look and I became like the everyman, and I had this biker look that I was doing on the indie scene for a number of years, which went really well. And then I morphed that kind of into a kind of Duck Dynasty redneck version. There was a little bit of the Cody Diener prior mixed with this other everyman shtick that I was doing. That got me another job with TNA Wrestling or Impact Wrestling in a tag team with Cousin Jake, and we became known as the Dieners. Then that ran its course, and this opportunity came up to start this cool new thing called Violent by Design. And I shaved my head, completely changed my look, became a member of VBD, Loved my time doing that. Then that evolved, and I murdered my best friend on TV and Eric Young, which I thought I did, but I didn't. And then I became the leader of a crazy insane cult known as The Design. And I again kind of reinvented myself for that and reinvented how I did things. Then in the last couple of months, you've seen me reinvent myself again, and now I'm known as the people's choice, Cody Diener. The people have spoken. I've put the decision for everything that I'm going to be doing in the ring in the hands of who the people. They get to decide what I'm going to be doing moving forward. They get to choose what I do in the ring. They get to choose what I'm going to do with my career. And that has led to some of the most fun things that I have done in wrestling. So that's kind of a really quick history lesson of just some of the things that I've done. And the question from Josh was, have you found it intimidating changing your character over the years? Yes, I have. um, I have friends in this business that have wrestled for almost as long as me, and they're on 20 years in the business, and they are still doing the same thing that they did when they got into the business 20 years ago. They still have the same shtick, the same name, the same character, the same thing, and that's okay if that's your deal and that's what you want to do. Okay. However, I will say this, and this is Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. So this is a life lesson for both wrestlers that are listening to this, independent wrestlers, but also if you're not involved in wrestling, this applies to you as well. You've got to take a serious look at yourself and what you're putting out there in the world in whatever line of business that you're doing, and ask yourself, is what I'm doing working? And if I'm not finding success in what I'm doing, am I blaming other people for the situation of this lack of success or these lack of opportunities? Or is there something that I can do to better my situation? That's a life lesson. Now, it doesn't matter what scenario. You can, in any scenario that you're in, you can either have a victim mentality where it's just, oh, this negative thing or this lack of success or whatever's happening that's negative, it's happening to me and it's somebody else's fault. Or you can have what I call a champion's mentality, where because a champion doesn't focus on the negative and isn't a victim, they focus on the positive. They learn from the negative and they go, okay, if there's something that I can control, which is really the only thing you can do, is you can't control other people, you can only control yourself. I'll take ownership of something that I can control, and I will change it if need be in order to find success for myself. That's really, in a nutshell, the reason why I've changed my character along the way. Is I was able to see, okay, I'm finding success now, but I know the key to longevity in professional wrestling is reinventing yourself in order to stay relevant. And sometimes that reinvention happens quickly, in that, especially when you're dealing with television wrestling, because on the independent wrestling scene, you might have a character or a shtick that you're doing that the people in that town or that indie show are only seeing monthly, and that's being generous. Usually in indie shows, they only run every couple months or maybe only a couple times a year. So the thing that you're doing is only seen by that audience maybe a few times a year. Television wrestling, they see that every single week. So that character, that shtick, that thing, that whatever you're offering the wrestling world is exponentially being seen over and over again because it's being seen weekly rather than monthly or yearly on the independent wrestling scene. So you better be willing to change, evolve, and grow, and to stay relevant, or you're not going to last. That's something that I've learned. But that is Josh's question: is that intimidating changing your characters? Yes. It's intimidating because if you're like me, every single version of myself that I've put out into the wrestling world, I've given my all. I've poured my heart, my soul. I'm consumed by that because I love wrestling so much. I'm consumed by this business. So if I'm doing something on television, I'm like playing a certain character, I'm putting out this thing to the world, I'm consumed by it. It just, it's, I think about it constantly. So everything in me is going into putting this idea out into the world. And then it's like, okay, time to change. All that stuff that you were just pouring your heart and soul into is over. And now you gotta switch gears and do something else. That kind of gives you a sense of the mentality of why that can be so difficult. Is because you're putting all this into it and then you've just got to change on a dime. That's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. And I think that's why some people that I see in this business that never change, they just have this thing that they do and they just continue along that path. It's because that idea of changing is intimidating. And they they build a brand, they build this thing up that they put their heart and soul in, and then to just change it all of a sudden is really scary. The most intimidating change that I had from in my career was when I went from being, Cody Deaner, the fun loving kind of redneck renegade Diener on TV, to then joining VBD and Violent by Design, shaving my head, shaving my beard, and becoming doing a completely, completely different, being a different person in everything that I do. That was the most intimidating for me because I had been the previous incarnation of myself for over a decade and I was comfortable in my skin. I knew who I was in the ring, and then all of a sudden, and I was confident, and then this new character change, all of a sudden, I've got to now rebuild my confidence because I'm not super confident in this new version of myself because I don't even really even know who this person is, and I'm kind of learning that in real time on national television in front of the Impact Wrestling fans. It was Impact Wrestling at the time. Think about that. That's an intimidating thing. I've learned to embrace that and use that nervousness, that intimidation as energy and as fuel to fuel what I'm doing. And which leads to the currently what I'm doing right now um in TNA wrestling. Um David E. Houston over on Facebook said, I'm enjoying the new look. Thank you. I'm doing this new thing that I'm doing. Andrew Farewell said, keep up the good work, Diener. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love what I'm doing right now. What I'm doing right now, I love it. And Jamie Weisner over on YouTube said, how much fun are you having with what you're currently doing on TV with the People's Choice thing? I think it's obvious. Uh, if you're watching it, I'm having fun with it. If you're watching it going, it looks like this guy's having fun. That is not an act. That is 100% the truth. I'm having fun. And there's a number of reasons why. One, it's funny that I've maybe probably taken this long in my career, but in 25 years, what you're seeing right now on TV with me doing this People's Choice character, putting the the power in the people's hands, that is the closest version of myself as the real me, so to speak, in wrestling. It's the closest version to the real me that I've ever done on television. That's just what it is. It's the real me is right there. It's the closest thing to the real me that I've ever done on TV, which that in itself was also intimidating because I've kind of enjoyed playing characters. And then now it's like I'm still kind of doing a character thing, but it's also just me now. And that's kind of intimidating in its own way. But it's the closest to me. So that's one of the reasons why I'm loving it, is because it's like, oh, this is easy. It's just I just get to be me and have fun because this is what wrestling is to me. It's fun, but also it's unpredictable. That's the fun part of this. So let me give you just a little bit of inside baseball on this, so you guys will understand this, because I've had some people say and ask me, both wrestling fans and then wrestlers as well. They're kind of asking me about this new thing, this idea. Oh, you're giving people choices and things like that's kind of like not. That's an interesting idea, but it's not like a shoot, as they say. Like you're not really giving the people the choices. And I have to quickly say to them, well, no, actually, it is a shoot because I'm in the production meetings for TNA Wrestling because I'm also a producer. And when you're in a production meeting, you're kind of talking about, okay, you know, how's the show going to go down? We want to make sure that it's produced the right way and that the cameras are catching everything the proper way. There's a whole thing. I'm not going to go to inside baseball and how the sausage gets made, but I'm just telling you, there's a lot of things that go into making the product as awesome as it is that you see each and every week on TV. But when you get into a production meeting and you go and it's said, okay, now Cody's going to come to the ring and he's going to ask, the audience what they want to see, and he's going to give them this choice, who's going to give them this choice. This might happen or this might happen. That's what is said in the meeting because there's literally two things that could happen. And we don't know until it happens live on the show. That is a shoot. So, I'll give you an example. It was on the run sheet that Cody Deaner is going to wrestle grizzled young vet wrestler number 1, or he's going to wrestle grizzled young vet wrestler number 2. He's legit. We don't know who his opponent's going to be because we're giving the audience the choice of who his opponent's going to be. That was a shoot. So, a little bit of inside baseball. You kind of got to, as a wrestler, I got to plan out how I'm going to tackle this moment and tackle this performance and tackle this wrestler. And I don't even know who my opponent's going to be until the audience picks who that opponent's going to be. The cool, fun, unpredictable wrench that got thrown into the plans that day was we're in Philadelphia and I give the fans the option. Do I wrestle grizzled young vet number 1 or do I wrestle grizzled young vet number 2? And the Philly faithful, the people of Philadelphia, of course, don't decide on either option. They decide you're going to wrestle them both. And they start to chant both. So now a third option, a third choice gets thrown into the mix is, no, Cody, you're actually going to wrestle both guys in a 2-on-1 match. Well, this is a shoot. So it wasn't planned. Okay, it doesn't matter what the audience says, Cody, you're going to wrestle that guy because that's what the booker says. No, the booker didn't say that. It's literally going to be the people's choice. So the people have spoken. They all wanted me to wrestle them both. So I say, okay, I guess I'm wrestling you both. Boom, they ring the bell. Now I'm in a 2-on-1 match. Not planned, not discussed, not choreographed, not anything. Literally spur of the moment. I guess we're having a 2-on-1 match now because that's what the people wanted. And then I had a match on TV against 2 guys. That was a shoot. So the question being, how much fun am I having doing this thing? I'm having a lot of fun. I have been doing this long enough that this intimidation of I literally go to the ring and I don't know what's going to happen. The fans might decide. I might think I know what the fans are going to decide. Like, I think they're going to want me to wrestle this guy. I'm pretty sure they're going to say that, but oh no, wait. I wasn't anticipating them wanting me to wrestle both these guys. Okay, here we go. I guess I'm wrestling both. That's what happened. So wrestling is the best when it's fun and it's unpredictable and you don't know what you're going to see. That's the same for me. As a fan, I want my wrestling fun and unpredictable. As a performer, I want my wrestling fun and unpredictable. And this is the most fun and unpredictable moments that I've had in my wrestling career. I'm doing it live on national TV. That's a lot of fun. So it's pretty cool. So it's a shoot. And yes, it is pretty cool. Thank you, Joe Zerfla over on Facebook. He said, that's so cool. Yeah, man, it is cool. It's a shoot and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So we'll see what happens this coming weekend. I'll be in Newport, Kentucky, which is right on the border of Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio area. If you want to, if you're in that area, head on over to Impact Wrestling. Or sorry, not Impact Wrestling. I'm so used to saying that. It's TNA Wrestling. The show is still called Impact, by the way, but it's TNAWrestling.com. You can get tickets. I don't know. We'll see what the people in the Cincinnati area and Newport, Kentucky. We'll see what they want me to do at the tapings this weekend, and then you'll see how that plays over the next coming weeks on the show on TNA Impact. We'll see what happens. So I'm having a hell of a lot of fun. I'm also having a hell of a lot of fun right now. I was expecting that this episode of Wrestling is Life as Wrestling would probably last like 45 minutes, and geez, we're already over an hour. And I haven't even got to all the questions. I haven't even got to all my Patreon questions yet, so I'm gonna have to speed things up here. So Josh Alexander, thank you for that question. The answer is it's very intimidating, but also I've used that intimidation as fuel for what I'm doing. And I want to add this as well. This is something that I wanted to add to that. As a wrestler, you have to stay ahead of the curve, because if you wait to change your character when it's stale or just not working anymore, sometimes it's too late. It's too late. You've missed the boat. So you have to stay ahead of the curve on that, and you have to know, okay, this thing that and this is a life lesson, right? If you're in a job that you hate and you don't like, but you wait year after year to find a new job, sometimes you get stuck in that job that you hate. And you were like, man, there was an opportunity for me to switch gears and I didn't. I got stuck, and I'm stuck doing this thing. And I felt it. It was time to move on and do this new thing. And I didn't move on when I should have. And now I'm stuck. I bet you there's people listening to this right now that know exactly what I'm talking about. That might even be you. I want to say to that, one, it's never too late. So if that's you in your job situation, never too late to move on, do something you're passionate about. As a wrestler, I said maybe it's too late, because in the sense you've maybe missed the boat on that opportunity, and now you're going to have to switch gears to create a different opportunity for yourself, maybe with a different company or a different fan base, whatever it may be. And now it's not too late, but it's going to be harder for you to make that transition into this new thing because you waited too long. You got to be ahead of the curve. So I've tried to do that. I've tried to stay ahead of the curve. I really trust my gut. I trust my instincts. And I knew that it was time for me to do this new thing and really embrace this idea of the people's choice. And it's working. And I don't know, it's not going to work forever. Maybe, like it might be, when it's time to switch gears or do something new with it, I'll know when that time is, but I know that it sure as hell isn't right now, because I'm loving what I'm doing right now. And there's so much cool stuff and cool ideas that I have for this character and what it could do and what could be on the show. And not just me, I have other wrestlers on the show, other TNA guys, like, man. And then they're giving me ideas. Oh, you could do this, you could do that. I'm like, yeah, man, there's so many possibilities. The possibilities are endless with the people's choice, and the fun has only just begun. I'll leave it at that. Let's go to some other questions here. That was the first question that I said I would get to, which leads into what I was just saying. This Josh Alexander question leads into the first question of John Kasperzik. Said, what's been your favorite gimmick that you portrayed in Impact / TNA? Was it your Violent by Design? Was it the design? Was it the current one that I'm doing? Or was it my past version of myself many moons ago in 2009 when I joined? That's kind of too hard to answer, but I will say, like, I'm really digging what I'm doing now. And it leads into what I was just saying in the sense that this is the most fun I've been having, in my career. Some of the most fun I've had is right now, because I think wrestling is best when it's fun and unpredictable. And there's nothing more fun and unpredictable than just getting to listen to the people, listen to the wrestling fans, and let them decide what you're going to do. Man, this is probably the most fun I've had on camera. is what I'm doing right now. Now, the most fun behind the scenes is different because that's always more fun when you're with somebody and you're with a friend. I said this when it was happening, and I'll say this right now. On behind the scenes, the most fun and fulfilling that I've had is um with Violent by Design. I was with my very good friends, Eric Young, also my who became a very good friend and like family to me, and Joe Doring. Both those guys who I grew very close to. I was already really close with Eric Young, and then I become very close with Joe as well. Uh, that was the most fun that I had in my career behind the scenes was um, working with working with those guys. Just the time that you spend when you're in a faction or a group of guys is like they become your partners, man. And those guys became my partners because the success of your career is based on also the success of somebody else and how well you work together and how well you're doing as a team and as a unit. So it's um it's this added incentive of success because it's based on the success of somebody else. So then you're like putting pressure on yourself, like, oh, if I don't do good at this, that's not good for Eric Young. If I don't do good at this, then that's not good for Joe Doring, and then vice versa. We want to build each other up and do well for each other. So we got to do that on TV with each other, but then also just hanging out and the laughs and the fun that we had, backstage, just working together, doing pre-tapes. Got to do a lot of off-site stuff for Violent by Design, which is so cool and so fun. So probably the most fun I've had in my career behind the scenes was with Violent by Design, but a lot of the most fun I'm having on camera is the stuff I'm doing right now with the People's Choice. Thanks for the question. That's all the questions from my patrons. So you can go to patreon.com/Cody Diener, become a patron. And if you do that, next time I do one of these episodes, I'll make sure that I get to your question before I get to everybody else. I'm going to head over to Instagram right now and just fire off some answers to some of these questions that I'm seeing over on Instagram. I'm seeing on Instagram that I'm seeing from Renee Liz Lawrence. Good afternoon, Cody. Much love from Oshawa as always. I'm still the king of the schwa. I love Oshawa. I'm the king there. So I appreciate you, Renee. I love the schwa. Miss Ava Hunt 1 over on Instagram said, "Hey, you came to my school at LP Miller in Nipawin." Yes, I talked about Saskatchewan and being in Saskatchewan earlier in the show. LP Miller School in Nipawin, Saskatchewan. I went to your school. I did a presentation there and I loved it. I know exactly what school you're talking about because LP Miller is a wonderful school with wonderful people. And I very much enjoyed my time in Nipawin and I hope to be back. And Miss Ava Hunt 1 over on Instagram said, "You made me follow my dreams." Thank you, Ava, for sharing that. And I'm glad that the presentation and the programming that I brought to your school, encouraged you to follow your dreams. And whatever your dream is that you're following right now, Ava, that is awesome. I'm glad that my story inspired you to make you the hero of your story in whatever you're doing. So if you want to, I said this earlier, if you want to bring me to your school and share my story with your students, like I did for Ava at her school in LP Miller in Nipawin, Saskatchewan, head on over to chrisgrayspeaks.com and you can see that. Jody A. Jenkins on Instagram said, "Talk about the influence that Commissioner Jenkins had on you in your early years." No thanks. Jody Jenkins was a manager of mine very early in my career, so he's just trying to get me to put him over here on Instagram and on this episode of the show. I refuse to do that. I learned nothing from you, Jody Jenkins, other than how to not conduct myself in a locker room. um Dirk Diggler 1369 says on Instagram, "Do you sign autographs at live events?" Of course, I sign autographs. It's one of my favorite things to do at indie shows, at events, is sign autographs, sell my merch, meet the fans. Like I meet fans constantly, and all the charity work that I've done with fans is all ends up being from people that I have met at wrestling shows, often at the merch table. So, of course, I sign autographs at shows. I love it. So that's what I do. Luna Noir 1084 said, I loved you and cousin Jake something. Yeah, I was just talking about the different versions of my character that I've played on television. I had a lot of fun with Jake in the Deaners and very, very much enjoyed that. So thank you, Luna Noir 1084 on Instagram for that. Lockhand 8449 question: Cody Diener versus Moose for TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Well, Lockhand 8449, if I wrestle Moose for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, well, that's not my choice. That's not even Moose's choice. That's the people's choice. So if the people start a campaign for me to wrestle Moose for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, I know that Santino Marella and the management at TNA Wrestling, they're listening to the people. So if that's what the people want, then perhaps that might be what the people get. And if the people have spoken and they speak and say they want to see me versus Moose for the Heavyweight Championship, it might happen. That's the fun. That's the unpredictability. That's the craziness that I'm saying about this character, is that literally anything could happen. And one of those things that could happen is me wrestling Moose for the World Heavyweight Championship. I don't know. Stay tuned. It Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Kyle Harden says, is TNA doing meet and greets backstage like they used to? They're not doing backstage meet and greets, but there are meet and greets at every single television taping and live event. You have an opportunity to uh, get an autograph, get a picture taken, spend some time with the stars of TNA wrestling. They do different people. Every single loop, there's a new batch of people, and we listen to the fans at TNA Wrestling. So yes, that is something that is done, an opportunity that you get to do as a wrestling fan. You come to TNA Wrestling show, you get that chance every single time. I think that's all. I'm just going back through the comments that have come in on YouTube, on Facebook, and just making sure that I kind of hit them all. And because we're already at over an hour right now, and I want to make sure that I, you know, I don't want to be here all day. Um, so I appreciate you guys joining me for this special edition of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. And if you enjoyed this episode, one, you can put it into the chat right now. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube page, I'm trying to up my subscriptions. So head on over to youtube.com/at Cody Diener podcast. A lot of you are watching this there right now. If that's you, hit that subscribe button, please. I'm trying to get my sub numbers up. If you're over on Facebook, head on over to youtube.com/at Cody Diener podcast, hit the subscribe button. And in the comments, let me know if you enjoyed this episode and if you want me to do this again. I enjoyed this. It's been a whirlwind. I'm tired. I've been on the road. I had to really made sure I was able to carve out the right amount of time to do this. I know that at 12 noon in the middle of the day isn't the most ideal time to be doing an episode. However, Ryan Harvey over on YouTube just said that he loved this episode. So Ryan, thank you. Thank you for listening to all the episodes, Ryan, and specifically joining us for this one. I want to do more of this. If you want to make sure, because I wasn't able to get to all the questions today, if you want to make sure that I get to your question, because you won't be able to join it live at the time that it's on, and you won't be able to I won't be able to get to your question, but you want to make sure that I do. I always service my patrons first. So every single question that came in on patreon.com/Cody Diener. I answer that question here today. So thank you to my patrons. If you want to support me, you enjoyed this episode, you've been enjoying my episodes each and every week that have been coming to you free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or if you've been watching them here on YouTube and you want to support me, head on over to patreon.com/Cody Diener right now. Let me put that in the comment section below, just so that anybody here that's watching this, you can just click on that link right now below, patreon.com/Cody Diener, and you can sign up for a free trial. Yes, free trial over at patreon.com/Cody Diener. And you can get each and every episode early and ad free. No intro, no outro, no commercials. And you can also get a bonus story. There's bonus content each and every week. I do a bonus story, sometimes two, with my guests. So speaking of ads, let me just quickly end here with another plug. This show that you just watch and listen to is brought to you by restwhendead.ca. Go to restwhendead.ca right now. Check out their full catalog. The wicked awesome shirts you're seeing behind me, they're available now. I love this tee right here, the stringer tee. Man, like makes you look super jacked in the gym. Head on over to restwhendead.ca. You can get yourself that. You can get yourself this hat. The full collection's up there. If you need some supplements, like the wonderful supplement, the coffee protein that I had in my coffee that I gotta go get another one. Actually, I'm gonna go pour myself another and put a little scoop of protein in there. If you want some protein for your coffee, head on over to ceofit.ca. I'm gonna do another review of that protein coffee, very specifically on a future episode with the actual product in front of me, and I'll give you all the details on that. So I'll be doing some more product reviews, very product specific things that I've been using over the last number of weeks, because like I said, I want to make sure that anything that I promote and tell you to use, I use it myself and I believe in it. So I'm going to start doing some more product specific things from ceofit.ca and let you know what I think of them, and then you can try it out yourself. If there's something that I'm using that sounds like it's something that you might need, you can head on over to ceofit.ca and check it out yourself, and you'll know this endorsed by me, Cody Diener. So thank you to my sponsors. Thank you for showing up. Head on over to patreon.com/Cody Diener. You can get a free trial there. And there's another way you can support me by supporting me, supporting my sponsors. I continue the continued support as we continue to get closer and closer to episode 52. 1 year of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. Man, what a year it's been. We're creeping up on that 1 year anniversary of the show. I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about what we're going to be doing next week. Now, last week you heard me plug at the end of the show that I teased and said that I have somebody who has stood side by side with the most legendary people in the business. I am still going to bring you that episode, that person, that interview, that conversation. It's still going to be coming at you. So in the weeks ahead, stay tuned to Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. I'm still going to be giving you that content, but I'm going to tease you right now and say that next week, for the first time ever, I'm going to have multiple guests on the show, all at the same time. Yep, all at the same time. It's going to be a multiple guest show, all on the show all at once, and it's super fun. It's super awesome, and I'm looking forward to that. So the first time ever on Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, we're gonna have multiple guests on the show all at once. It's gonna be a wild ride. And then I'm also going to be bringing you that legendary guest that's worked with the legends of yesteryear and current legends right now in the business. That's going to be coming at you too over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned to patreon.com/Cody Diener to get those episodes early and ad free. Subscribe to my YouTube page here. And no matter what, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're listening to this on your podcast platform of choice. When you come back next week and in the weeks to come, you will learn the same thing that we learn every week here on the show. And that is that wrestling is life, is wrestling. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.